Welcome everyone to our ParTechnologies webinar on the ROI of IoT. Today our webinar will focus on the value that an IoT solution will bring to a food service organization. And as Katie stated, my name is Barbara Sullivan and I'm the Senior Product Manager for the SureCheck solution that includes our IoT offering. I'm going to begin by providing a background on how IoT solutions can assist in the food service organizations in helping to lower operational costs and help in streamlining the overall monitoring of the key assets. And then I'm going to turn it over to the webinar to Jim Gelos, our operations manager for the SureCheck product, who will outline the must-haves for an effective IoT solution. So one of the largest challenges a food service organization faces today is the ability to effectively manage all operational costs. The Internet of Things, or better known as IoT, has become a crucial place within the food service industry that can provide assistance in helping to manage operational costs effectively. But operational costs are just one piece of the ROI equation. IoT also provides a food service organization the insight to improve internal processes that can help a business offer exceptional food service. An operational manager can find that adding a new IoT solution can be quite beneficial and productive to the overall operations of the business. The deployment of an IoT solution provides a second pair of eyes that will continuously manage and monitor the key equipment within the facility, which will free up time for staff to perform other critical necessary tasks and activities. In addition, by having continuous monitoring of these assets, it can assist in effectively maintaining the health of the equipment, ultimately prolonging the life. A key element that IoT introduces is the ability to properly monitor food service equipment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Most often, issues will arise when the staff is not present, and this usually occurs, of course, at night, in the middle of the night when the business is closed. If a refrigerator or freezer stops working, not only is there additional expenses for fixing or replacing the appliance, but the added risk that the food being stored in the unit has reached temperatures that are outside of the safety zone, and it forces the business to discard the food. The cost associated for spoiled food can be substantial and damaging for an organization. In addition, if food items that were compromised slipped through the process and were served to customers, this could be quite devastating to the business and ultimately the brand. As Warren Buffett has been quoted, it takes 10 years to build a reputation, but only 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll want to do things differently. IoT remote monitoring is one thing that should be considered for all food service organizations. IoT technology can play a key role when it comes to monitoring the food storage equipment and keeping your operational costs in line. The food storage equipment, as we know, is a critical component to keeping food safe and decreasing food waste for food service businesses. In the restaurants alone, refrigeration and cooking equipment can account for anywhere from 20 to 45% of the total energy costs that are associated to the food service business. So if a food storage unit is not working properly, the energy cost for that particular device could be impacted and cause operational costs to increase. By implementing IoT technology, the critical equipment is continuously monitored, which results in the ability to effectively manage the energy costs of the equipment and be proactive to addressing any issues. Alerts can be sent when there are changes in the equipment temperature or when there is actually human error, like leaving a door open. By receiving these alerts in a timely fashion, important and critical issues can immediately be responded to and addressed. The ability to anticipate equipment failures before they happen so maintenance can be scheduled will assist in keeping the food safe and at the right temperature, which will avoid any of the possibilities of having to discard any vital food items. A recent report from the National Restaurant Association found that 10% of food purchased by a restaurant is discarded before it even reaches a guest due to a breakdown in storage process. So as we can see food waste is really on the rise. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, nearly 1/3 of human food production is wasted globally each year. The United States is a leading nation in food waste. it reports that over 133 billion pounds of food is thrown out on an annual basis. And on a global level, the food waste is actually a staggering 1.3 billion tons per year. If 1/4 of this food waste by the world was saved, what's interesting is that you could feed up to 870 million people. So how can we all help in decreasing food that is wasted? One particular helpful way is deploying IoT technology. An IoT solution can greatly aid in trimming down food waste. By having IoT to monitor these key assets that include refrigeration, the storage, and the freezers, this can help in preventing the conditions that would spoil food and cause an operator to throw it away. What's interesting, according to a research that's completed by Champions 12.3, for every dollar a company invests to reduce food waste, they can realize a saving as much as $14 in operating costs. In addition, by having an IoT solution, a business can realize a reduction in labor costs just by eliminating the need to manually check equipment temperatures. This can free up time of staff and allow them to concentrate on the other necessary food-related tasks. So just to demonstrate how valuable an IoT solution can be to a food service organization, let me take a minute and walk you through an example of a recent PAR customer's experience. A week after this PAR customer installed their IoT solution, the coolers and freezers running off a common cooling bank line experienced a leakage failure. Because they had PAR IoT Remote Monitoring, the staff immediately received text messages when the temperatures of the coolers and freezers went above the set thresholds. Immediately, the staff took action and they actually had the lines replaced. They also found that some of the older doors to the equipment was in dire need of repair, and immediately they then took action to have these new pins installed to tighten the seals on the doors. What's interesting is by having the IoT system installed and the appropriate alert sent when the temperature thresholds were out of range, the operator was actually able to save all the food in these units, which amounted to roughly $25,000. So as you can see by our example, this food service organization was able to realize a substantial savings in relation to their investment in IoT. So far, we've discussed the reasons why an IoT solution helps in lowering operational costs, and we also talked about how it can assist in reducing valuable food waste. Now let's focus a little on the must-haves of a true IoT remote monitoring solution. There are several key components that your IoT product must include to have a complete, effective solution. First, it must be a cloud-based solution with availability at all times. It also must have gateways that can support various sensors based on the unique needs of your food service business. It also must have a portal or a website that is available for anytime access that includes your system setup and the ongoing administration of your solution. The IoT solution must also have real-time alerting, so when sensors are out of compliance or the power is disrupted, a notification can be sent out for immediate action. And with all the data being collected in the cloud, it should have a robust reporting system that allows anytime access to the data pertaining to your IoT solution, so you can actually review it and take action. I'm now going to turn the webinar over to Jim Gelos and let him walk through the details of the components of the IoT solution. Jim?
Oh, thank you, Barbara. So what I'm going to cover in my part of the presentation, I'm going to cover the basic hardware components of an IoT monitoring system, and also how we manage some of those components to get the data we require. So one of the main components is, as Barb said, is a gateway. And the basic concept of a gateway is it collects data from multiple sensors and communicates that via the internet to a web server and providing the sensor data. A good example of that is we want to measure the temperature of a freezer or a cooler. We put a sensor in the freezer or the cooler, and that gets communicated back up to our server through a gateway. The physical location of the gateway is going to be on the same site, same restaurant, same store as the sensors. So there's a couple different types of gateways that you need to know about, and they really affect the price of a system on an ongoing basis. And of course, for any solution, whichever way you choose, there's advantages and disadvantages. So the first one we'll talk about here is a wireless gateway. Typically, that's a cell phone connection between the gateway, a cellular provider, which provides access to the internet, and then it allows communication over the internet to a web-based server. From a cost basis, there's a cellular service element into the billing. The key advantage here is, and this is a major key advantage, is we don't have to get the IT groups involved. And from a location standpoint, it's easier to locate this gateway at an optimal location for the best radio pickup from the sensors. So really, there's no cabling involved other than AC power. So the other alternative is an Ethernet gateway. This basically eliminates that cellular billing, so there's a huge advantage in cost. But its disadvantage is you have to interface it through your internet router or your system, and that's going to typically require Ethernet cabling. And also, your firewall is going to have to be configured to allow our gateway to any gateway to communicate through your network to the IoT web server. We call this, there's a name for this, we call it whitelisting the firewall. So basically, the gateway talks over the IoT server over an internet connection. And the second duty of a gateway is to communicate to the sensors. Placement of the gateway is important to get optimal coverage, of course, for the required sensors. So what's important for you to know? It's important to know how many sensors a single gateway can support. We've seen systems with as few as, supporting 20 sensors. So if you need 30 sensors, you need 2 gateways. And the secondary thing you need to be aware of is the radio technology used, because that's really going to depend how far you can support a gateway from a sensor. And of course, if that distance is beyond the technical capability of the radio, then you need to put in a second gateway or a third gateway. And so basically what we've done in our product line is we've set up a process before a true install to decide how many gateways you need. Other considerations required for a gateway is, we want secure communication, so we use state-of-the-art encryption techniques, and so you got to look for that. And the other thing, I've heard that software engineers cause bugs every once in a while, so you want to be able to do an over-the-air type software upgrade with a simple button push or to upgrade all these sensors. You have thousands of sensors in a network in an Internet of Things monitoring system. The heart of the system is, of course, the sensors, and a sensor is just that. It collects desired data. The data that the sensor collects, it's communicated to the web server via the gateway, as you saw in the prior slides. One of the main consideration in sensor selection is the physical environment. So if it's a very wet environment where you're spraying hoses and cleaning and you got a lot of water, you need an industrial grade sensor that's watertight. If it's a dry environment and maybe just once in a while a damp cloth for cleaning, you can go with a lower cost alternative in a commercial grade type sensor. So there's physical environment considerations for what sensors that you need. And of course, there's various types of sensors, temperature, humidity, if your door on your walk-in coolers is open or closed, we basically motion, and then like a simple push button can detect also. The other thing to talk about sensors is the interval of frequency of the data collection. So, typically this is a trade-off between battery life. You don't want a situation where you got your sensors hardwired to power. You want to use battery technology so they're free of cabling. And typically you can get over 2 years of battery life, in some cases well over 5. And if I really do the math, I can have some sensors based on over a 10-year life of battery, based on, a low frequency of detection. So far we've talked about the gateway that gets our data to our server. We've got a sensor that actually collects the data, and now we got to have access to this data. So the next part of any system is some sort of portal, whether it be a Windows application. In the PAR's case, we use a web-based application. And basically, what's it do? It provides access to the web server. So a computer with a web browser can be used, or a mobile application can be used on an iPhone, an iPad, or different types of Android devices, being the most common. The portal is your administration central. It's where you can add users and user information. It's where you set up the alerts that we really care about. And the portal allows basic setup of each sensor for your desired needs and the thresholds we want to set on the data. I'll just throw out a quick example of what this would be. I'll use a cooler, for instance. Maybe we want to set a cooler to alert us if the temperature rises above 41 degrees for an extended period beyond the defrost cycle. Or maybe we want to know when a cooler goes below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, because we don't want to freeze all our produce, wrecking the food quality. So in this case, you got some food safety issues, and on the other side, going below 32 or below, you got a food quality that we're addressing. So I got to note that an IoT monitoring system must allow for a way to take into account these defrost cycles, because, when we first got into this, some of our first customers were getting a multitude of alarms based on defrost cycles, so you must take that into account when you're setting the system up. You don't want false alerting. You want to get an alert when there's really action to be taken, when you really have a problem. And that's something we take very seriously. The system also allows, from the portal, you can set up your hierarchy. So if you're, a nationwide or an international, let's say you're an international company, you could set the hierarchy up. I'll just throw an example out: country, region in the country, maybe state, the county, and village, town, city, site names. So you can set up a hierarchy. And why would you want to do that? You want that for user visibility. So if you only want a manager or a food safety person to see their store, you can set it up that way. From a corporate standpoint, if you want them to see everything in the system, you can set corporate people to see everything in the system. So there is a hierarchy setup you can do from most portals. The portal also allows you to look at each sensor, viewing all the collected data, and there's typically a very simple chart where you can see where you're, in the case of temperature, if your temperatures are within the specs you need, you can see your defrost cycles. And the system should also allow a data dump to a Microsoft Excel for secondary data analysis. One of the other features that we provide is we can actually put a map of a floor plan into the system, and we can actually position each sensor where it really is on the floor map, and then you can actually do a snapshot and show the current status of each sensor in the network on that picture. So it's pretty neat. Then, this alerts is the next subject. Alerts are the key to the system. So, this is the power in the system. So let's say you have a refrigeration unit. It goes beyond the temperature requirements, once again, for food safety or for food quality. What do you want to happen? Well, what you want to happen is the appropriate staff to get a text message detailing the issue. What would the detail be? Hey, what site is it at? Hey, what's the asset that's got the problem's name? What is the issue? Example, temperatures over 50 degrees Fahrenheit, not a good thing. Once again, you got to take the defrost cycle in the case, and the temperature might be above 50 and it might be in a defrost cycle. You don't want to get an alert on that. An alert can be a text message, or it can be an email message, or it can be both if you desire. Alerts can also be set up to repeat, and you can set up the frequency you want it to repeat until the core root cause issue is addressed. And you can also set up, in many systems, you can set up an escalation to alternative staff if the problem isn't fixed in a specific amount of time. And the next thing any IoT system is going to have is a comprehensive reporting system. I think the word we use here is robust. So an IoT monitoring system must provide a reporting of all the key information that it captures. Data collected by the system should be able to be captured in a report. Example, we want temperature data, maybe the battery levels of all the sensors, radio signal strengths, make sure the system's strong. But of course, any different type of sensor, you want the data from that type of sensor, okay? And basically what you could do in reporting is you set a time span and boom, you get the data during that time span for the sensor. The other thing you could do with reporting is set up a subscription. So maybe you want to see a specific location's data on a weekly basis. So you set up a subscription to your email address, and let's say it's every Monday morning. Every Monday morning you get a report, and it shows, you know, the situation at each of the assets that you're monitoring. And you should be able to set it up so you get an immediate report, daily, weekly, monthly, as an examples. So that's a quick overview of all the different components and how we use the web portals to control the system, and alerts being the key to the system, and the reports giving you easy access to the important data. And now what I'd like to do is turn it back over to Barb to provide some detailed ROI information.
Thanks, Jim. So we're going to summarize a little bit on what actually the IoT solution can provide in terms of an ROI. We talked a little bit today about how it was instrumental on helping to manage operational costs, and we also talked about how it can help in reducing food waste. So by deploying a complete IoT solution, it actually can help you in preventing and prolonging the life of your key equipment. Like Jim was talking about, you were able to notice when there are issues and you're able to act upon them quickly. In addition, the key is to have these alerts set up so that to notify your staff when there is an actual problem, when the temperature threshold is above or below, and you can actually avoid issues that could actually lead to food safety problems that you might have within your food service organization. You also want to have the ability to set up this robust reporting that Jim was talking about that can help you aid in proactively detecting these problems and getting them resolved before they become a major issue within your restaurant or your operations. Another value that IoT brings to the operator is the ability to set up the unique pieces of the equipment to have different temperature settings. So for example, you can have an individual shelf or a section of an actual cooling unit that can have different unique temperature thresholds. So all those areas can be uniquely monitored and be able to have the different temperature thresholds set for them so that if they do go up and down beyond the threshold, you'll be notified immediately. And last but not least, an IoT solution can help you in actually saving time for your staff, so that they don't no longer have to be required to manually monitor all this equipment, and they can actually go and be freed up to perform other necessary tasks for your organization. So as we stated, our ParIoT solution is part of our overall SureCheck solution. The SureCheck solution not only focuses on IoT, but in fact it is an end-to-end operational management solution that includes a task management module, a food safety module where we do temperature checks for checklists and for HACCP, and then of course the IoT. The goal of our SureCheck solution is allow the restaurants and the food retailers the ability to manage all their operational responsibilities to be more effective and proactive. Our solution also combines all the business and operational strategies that you would require into one solution and allow you to increase your visibility and your quality control for all your food service initiatives. Now I'm going to turn the webinar back over to Katie to open it up for questions. Katie?
Thank you, Barb, and thank you, Jim. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, please, like I said, go ahead and submit them into the question pane. I've got a few to kick us off here that have been submitted. So the first question that I received is, with the IoT product, how many sensors can one gateway support?
Barb, you want me to take that one, Barb?
Go ahead.
So in our system, we use a 900 megahertz radio, so we can go pretty far distances, and we could support up to 100 sensors with one gateway, which is a big advantage of the PAR system because of the distance capability and the number of sensors we support.
Okay. And what sort of, I think a follow-up to that one is, what sort of distance range considerations are there?
So, radio frequency is a funny thing. So we start with line of sight when we talk about radio. So basically what we're talking about is the distance between a sensor and the gateway. So our system has been designed and tested to go 1,000 feet if it's line of sight. So of course, if you got walls in the middle and they're metal walls, that'll lower it a little bit. If you got just wooden walls, it makes it it's not much of a barrier for radio frequencies. So it really depends on the layout of the building and the number of floors, and so it's tricky. But line of sight, 1,000 feet, which I believe is the best, the PAR product's best in the industry for distance between gateway and sensor.
Awesome. And then another question about the sensors and the battery life of the sensor is, how long does the batteries and those sensors typically last?
Yeah, so if you start with the gateway, our current offering gateway, if power dies, the gateway does have a battery in it for backup. So, the system doesn't stop collecting data if the power goes out. In today's product, it'll last 8 to 12 hours. And we got a new product we're going to introduce here pretty quick where it'll last 6 to 7 days. So you can have a pretty long power outage. On the sensors, it definitely depends on how often you want your data to be collected. So if you're collecting data on a sensor, once an hour, on some of our sensors with lithium battery, the least in our calculations is 2 years, but in a lot of cases they'll last over 5 years.
Thank you, Jim. Barb, I think this is a good one for you to answer here. Where in the industries, or what industries, are you finding the biggest adoption rate among these types of solutions?
Oh, I can say there's several market segments that we actually see a great adoption. We're seeing them in restaurants, of course, and we're seeing them in grocery. We're also seeing them in contract food organizations that are wanting to be able to monitor all of their major food storage units. It's pretty prevalent all across all the different market segments. Any organization that actually has food and keeps big storage units and refrigeration and freezers, it's key for us for them to have an IoT solution.
Great, thank you. Okay, it looks like I just have one more question right now, unless anyone else wants to submit any more. Last question I have here is, with the PAR SureCheck solution, do all of the different pieces come as one solution, or can you kind of implement different phases?
Great question. So all of the pieces are independent. You can purchase any of our pieces. You could purchase food safety or task management or IoT independently and install them independently, and then you can add on. So as you start to grow your business, you might want to start with maybe IoT and then maybe introduce your task management to do standard operating procedures and different sanitation type checklists. And then after that, as you move into your HACCP and you want to do your compliance and have your checklist for that, you could actually move into food safety, where you do some of your temperature checks. So everything is independently available, and we can just add on as you grow your business.
Okay, so right now, those are all the questions that I have. If anyone on the line thinks of anything they forgot to ask, please feel free to reach out. Probably one of the easiest ways is on our website through the contact us form, or go ahead and reach out to us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We want to thank everyone for their time today. Big special thanks to Barbara and Jim for sharing their expertise and knowledge on the ROI of IoT. And I hope everyone has a really great day, and we look forward to having you again soon for a new webinar.